Welcome to War and Untold Stories. Here, we explore the hidden side of history. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button, and share your thoughts in the comments. Let's go back in time a little bit and set the stage. December 13, 2003, after months of searching, American forces launched a mission that would shock the world. Its name, Operation Red Dawn. Its target, Saddam Hussein. Now, following the U.S. invasion of Iraq in March 2003, Saddam Hussein's regime collapsed, but the former president of Iraq vanished. For months, he remained a symbol of defiance, hiding from one of the most powerful armies on earth. His whereabouts were unknown. Was he in Syria? Had he slipped across the border into Jordan or perhaps Iran? Maybe he had managed to escape all the way to Germany. You may remember the jokes about him being in a hobbit hole. Perhaps he was living like Bilbo Baggins, somewhere in the Shire, safe and sound and out of reach. Those are all possibilities. But in fact, as we know now, he was hiding near his hometown of Tikrit. So how did intelligence find him? Well, over the course of those months, U.S. forces gathered lots and lots of intel. They tracked down and questioned Saddam's former bodyguards, loyalists, and even members of his family. And slowly they started to develop a picture of where he might be hiding. They learned that he was most likely in the area around his hometown, and so began the search in earnest. It seems that while Saddam was a savvy leader, cunning and brutal when he needed to be, he also had a few weaknesses. One of these was his hometown. He never quite let go of his loyalty to his birthplace. Even after he had left it behind to rule Iraq, he kept up a home here. And it was this house that would eventually become known as the Spider Hole. So how did the U.S. find it? Intelligence officers noticed that despite heavy security measures, some of Saddam's relatives were coming and going from the property. Also, satellite images revealed suspicious earthworks around the house, specifically a newly dug 26-foot hole outside. These observations suggested that the house was being used for more than just family gatherings. Then several Iraqi informants confirmed that Saddam was in the area. Lieutenant General Raymond Odierno recalled in his memoir that the first tip came from an Iraqi brigadier general who defected and offered to lead them to Saddam's location. When they arrived at the house, however, the general said it was not the right place, so they continued their search. Later, an informant from one of Saddam's Ba'athist political parties gave them a piece of land about 15 kilometers from Tikrit. Again, they searched that area to no avail. Finally, according to Odierno, a farmer tipped them off that there was a strange-looking hole in the ground near his field. That's when the U.S. decided to launch Operation Red Dawn. The operation involved the 4th Infantry Division and Task Force 121. Two sites were targeted, codenamed Wolverine 1 and Wolverine 2. Wolverine 1 was that last piece of information the farmer provided. And Wolverine 2 turned out to be the famous Spider Hole. At Wolverine 2, a small farmhouse near Ad-Dor, they found him. When his captors finally pried open the hatch leading to the hole, what they saw inside shocked them. There was Saddam, unshaven and disheveled. He wore a military-style jacket and pants and was sitting cross-legged on a thin mattress. In front of him sat a pistol. Saddam was not armed at the time of his capture, though he had been known to carry weapons during his years as a leader. He didn't resist. He was arrested without a fight. In his book, Odierno writes, "There was a moment when several of us stood in the opening of the Spider Hole watching him emerge. We knew it was him, but we couldn't believe that it was really over. As soon as I could speak, I asked the interpreter to tell him, 'Mr. President, you are surrounded. Put your weapon down, stand up and walk out.' The mission had been a success." On that day, December 13, 2003, U.S. troops descended upon the rural farmhouse, arresting Saddam Hussein without a shot being fired. It was a far cry from the image many had built up in their minds of the former dictator's capture. They hadn't expected to find him in such close quarters, hiding in a small hole in the ground. Yet there he was. So how did he get there? Well, there are many theories, but we don't have a definitive answer. Some say he was trying to avoid capture and was moving around constantly. Others say that he fell out of favor with his former loyalists who were happy to see the end of his regime. Either way, it wasn't exactly the dignified end to his story that many had imagined. As word spread of his capture, celebrations erupted in Baghdad. Iraqis poured into the streets, waving American flags and cheering wildly. For many of them, It was a joyous occasion, a chance to express their joy at seeing the end of Saddam's brutal regime. But others were less enthusiastic. Some viewed the U.S. occupation as a humiliation for Iraq and its people. They felt that their country had been defeated and occupied by foreign forces. For Saddam himself, the news of his capture was no doubt a bitter pill to swallow. He had been a powerful leader for many years and had ruled Iraq with an iron fist. Now he was a prisoner, stripped of his power and dignity. So what happened next? Well, after his capture, Saddam was taken to a U.S. military base in Iraq where he was interrogated and held until his trial. He was indicted on multiple counts of crimes against humanity, including the 1982 massacre of the Kurdish population in Halabja, an atrocity that left thousands dead and became one of the darkest chapters in modern Iraqi history. During his trial, Saddam showed little remorse for his actions and defiantly proclaimed that he was the victim of a U.S.-led campaign to destroy Iraq. However, he was found guilty on all counts and sentenced to death by hanging. And on December 2006, he was executed by the Iraqi government. So why is the capture of Saddam Hussein considered a turning point in the Iraq War? Well, it's because he had become a symbol of resistance against the U.S. occupation. His capture symbolized the crumbling of the old regime and the beginning of a new era in Iraq's history. However, it's important to note that the war was far from over. In fact, it would continue for another 6 years. But still, the capture of Saddam Hussein was a major milestone and one that was widely covered by the media. The story of the spider hole has become something of a legend in the U.S. military. The image of Saddam being pulled out of the small hole and paraded before the cameras is seared into the public consciousness. When the news of Saddam's capture broke, President George W. Bush addressed the nation. The former dictator of Iraq will face the justice he denied to millions, Bush declared. It was a statement that was widely applauded at the time, though some critics argued that it showed a lack of understanding of the complexities of the situation in Iraq. Operation Red Dawn was not just the end of a manhunt. It marked the symbolic end of an era and the beginning of a long and painful chapter in Iraq's history. The capture of Saddam Hussein remains one of the defining moments of the Iraq War. It was a moment that brought an end to the brutal regime of one of the most notorious dictators of our time and offered hope for a brighter future for the people of Iraq. I hope you enjoyed learning about this iconic photo, and thank you for watching.